Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are midway through the 2028 season, and the Royals are off to an incredible start. A 60-24 record, up by 16 games in the AL Central as we try to defend our World Series championship. The start for the Royals, not quite as good as what the Yankees are doing this year, but to put it into perspective, definitely in the same neighborhood. The Yankees, as I tape this, are 52-18. So if the Yankees went 8-6 over their next 14 games, they'd have the same record as these Royals. Obviously, that would mean the Yankees are slowing down a bit, but still just an incredible season so far from the Royals. And the season is going so well that we're actually doing something a little bit wacky. Our starting shortstop, Nicky Lopez, is on the IL right now. And we are playing Bobby Witt Jr. at short and Shi-Tong Kim at third against our manager's wishes. And it's really not a great decision. Bobby Witt, you can see, is only 35 out of 65 in terms of his ability to play the position, although he does have, very good ratings for the position, with the exception of his range, which is probably about average of what you'd want there. In a perfect world, you'd like better. And then Shi-Tong Kim is only a 30 out of 55 at third base. So we are playing guys who just aren't really perfectly adept at those positions. Right now, mainly to kind of get them trained up, get our team more versatile. Nicky Lopez probably won't be back with us next year. I don't think the base case is that Bobby Witt Jr. becomes our shortstop, but we're just trying to get ourselves as much flexibility as possible. And given the massive lead that we've got in the division at this point, if we lose a couple of games because of poor defense, I don't think it's going to hurt us all that much, and it's just another learning experience. We'll see exactly how bad Bobby Witt Jr. ends up in terms of his fielding stats at short. You can see he's only played 3 games there so far. Hasn't made an error yet, but his zone rating is a little bit negative at this point. We'll see how those guys do. And importantly, won't be too long until Lopez is back. Still got about 2 weeks left with the injury, only 6 days on the IL, so hopefully we will have him back soon. And as we kick off this episode, I'm going to focus right on 2 things that have been coming up in the comments pretty frequently, regarding our last episode and even some episodes before that. First is what to do with Trevor Rogers, who you probably know we have signed for $18 million this year and next year, and then a team option for $18 million the season after. He's been moved out of the rotation by our manager, Byron Nichols. He's fragile now, coming off that injury that took him out of all of last season. But he's actually pitching reasonably well for us, a 6-0 record, 3.34 ERA over 62 innings pitched. And his stuff and his movement have actually bounced back a little bit compared to where we thought they were. We thought he was kind of, I guess his stuff is really what has bounced back, at least according to the latest evaluation from our scout. His control, not great, and it doesn't look like it. Almost 31 years old, I wouldn't think that it would ever come back. So there's been some suggestion that we trade him, and quite honestly, given that he's not starting for us, an $18 million reliever is definitely a luxury for the Royals. But when I look at what we could get for him right now and shop him around, it's just brutal. Basically, no prospects in a one-on-one trade, and then, the regulars who people would trade us for him are all either not that great or they're very highly priced players. Luis Patino from the Rays is a good example. Can see he's not as good a pitcher as Trevor Rogers, and his contract at $18 million with a player option for next year is essentially exactly the same. And that's kind of an example of what we could get for him. I think it's certainly possible that we decide to move on from Rogers after this season, but given that We still have money available to take on free agents, and he's pitching effectively for us. Obviously, he's a real expensive reliever at this point. But I do think there is a chance that he gets back into the rotation over the course of the year. You know, we'll see what some of the younger players like Tyler Baseman, Ricky Vanasco do. And then when we get to the playoffs, it's certainly our option to take over control at that point from Byron Nichols and potentially put Rogers back into the rotation as our fourth starter. So given that there's really so little available for him right now, I don't think we trade him now. You know, can always move on from him at the end of the season. But we are trying to win it all. And even if he's in the bullpen, I think we are a better team with Rogers on our team this year, as opposed to trading him away for something. And the other elephant in the room is our center field position. We had planned to turn the position over to Jason Dominguez after letting Kyle Lewis depart as a free agent. He tore his PCL in spring training, out for another 3 to 4 months, so pretty unlikely he's going to be back this year. And then Sal Frelick has been spending most of the time in center this year, given Dominguez's injury, even though he's really, you know, by nature a corner outfielder. He sprained his ankle a couple of weeks ago, out for another 6 weeks. So right now we have the rookie Will Taylor playing center field for us. You can see he's acceptable defensively for a center fielder. Not much of a hitting profile. He's done acceptably since he came up, hitting .252 for us in 147 at-bats, but a 82 OPS plus and a 0.6 WAR. He was kind of the backup to Frelick for a while and is now kind of our starter there. And then we also brought up another 25-year-old, Elijah Lambros, from AAA. You can see his defensive profile for center field is even more average-ish, and certainly probably below average in terms of what you'd want out there compared to Taylor. Also not much of a bat. Very limited action so far, just 13 at-bats, but hitting just a .154 and good for only a 5 OPS plus, which is pretty much as low as it gets. He's obviously only been up because we've lost Frelick. So we need to do something about center field. The issue when I look at the best center fielders out there and most of the center fielders who are available in the trade block is just that the amount that people are asking for is way out of line with their value. So what I have done is kind of pieced together a trade that I think will provide someone similar to Taylor, maybe a little bit better than Taylor, who can hopefully get us through the next month or so till we get to the trade deadline. And if it's not working out and if the prices on some of the higher quality center fielders come down, we can always make a subsequent trade. But I'll move on and show you exactly what I'm talking about, since I'm probably being very mysterious by not even showing what I'm doing yet. And in our last episode, we looked at some of the center fielders who were available, and the price for Brandon Marsh was really excessive, but the price for him has come down. Defensively, he's got a little bit better range than Will Taylor, similar error, similar arm. Better contact hitter, not an incredible batting profile. You can see over the course of his major league career, he's put up a 90 OPS plus, 90 WRC plus, so not quite a league average hitter, but really solid defensively. Not great, but solid, and I think he's better than Taylor at this point. And we can get him for not that much anymore. I will show you exactly what we can get him for shortly. The Reds really just want to get his contract off of the books at this point, so we can actually get him straight up for a middling starting pitching prospect, Sergio Aguero. Looks like in a best case scenario, he could become an acceptable starter. He was a scouting discovery about 3.5 years ago. Very good work ethic, good personality, but he's still only in rookie ball. It's actually his 20th birthday today, so we will say happy birthday to him as we think about trading him away. A 7.03 ERA in rookie ball last year, 6.21 in rookie ball this year. The fact that we can get Aguero for Marsh is a trade that I think we have to make. But what I'm going to try to do is get them to retain more of Marsh's contract. And you can see if we just move it up a notch, they won't do it. So we're going to have to work a little bit. But what I would like to essentially do is get the Reds to take on all of Marsh's contract so we don't spend any more money on him this season. And he is actually going to be a free agent after this year. So, essentially we would have no financial obligation to him even for this year. And the reason that I think that's important is if he doesn't work out or if the price on a better center fielder comes down, I want to have the optionality in the next 4 or 5 weeks till we get to the trade deadline to make a move. So I want to get him for as cheaply as possible just to keep our financial flexibility as high as possible. And we're able to get the Reds to retain all of his contract this year if we add in a couple other middling prospects. Shortstop Ethan Gomez, 23-year-old, playing A-ball this year, hitting .286, but poor work ethic, poor intelligence, doesn't look like he's ever going to be a major league hitter, and he's really not all that exceptional defensively. So no real concerns about moving on from him. And then a starting pitcher, Robbie Jimenez, 21 years old. Best case scenario is he is a back of the pitching staff major league arm, and he's also not got the best personality. So he's 21 years old, still never played above rookie ball. Aguero could become something. Don't think Gibson or Jimenez will. So really it's a free option on Brandon Marsh. So we're going to go ahead and make that trade, bring him on to play center field for us. That's going to allow us to send Mr. Lambros back down to AAA where I think he fits in better. We will move our new addition, Brandon Marsh, onto the active roster and then see whether with his left-handed bat and the fact that Will Taylor's a right hand, didn't mention that, but that's one other reason to think about doing this. I don't know whether Nichols will platoon them, but we could potentially be playing Marsh against righties and Taylor against lefties to get the youngster Taylor a little bit of action still until Sal Frelick comes back. I know it's not a huge move, probably not the earth-shaking center field move some of you would like to see, but it was really by far the most cost-effective thing we could do. The prices for the rest of the center fielders that were, better were insane. We'd have to be giving up, our number 1 or number 2 starters or Bobby Witt Jr. just to kind of get a conversation going, and I'm not willing to do that yet. And we've had Byron Nichols update our lineup, and Will Taylor is actually on the bench against both righties and lefties. Marsh batting second against righties and moving into the leadoff spot against lefties. So I think he will definitely give us slightly better defense than Will Taylor, and I think he should also be able to give us better offense. So a step in the right direction, definitely not a long-term answer for us at center field, and it might not even be a medium-term answer if we decide to upgrade from Marsh before the end of July. But for the time being, I think we've improved the weakest position on our team by a little bit. And we've moved to July, 61-25 record, 709 winning percentage, still in first place. Obviously, I have to decide on international free agents starting today. Stephen Paulini banged up with shoulder tendonitis day-to-day for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Moderate impact on throwing. I think we're going to try to have him play through that, hopefully. The youngster Shitong Kin, AL Rookie of the Month, his rookie season for us, fantastic so far. 292 batting average, 11 home runs, 26 doubles, 858 OPS, which is good for a 135 OPS plus. As I talked about, he's playing third base right now, learning on the job, but really love his bat and think he's going to be an important part of this team into the future. And it's a pretty impressive crop, at least on the top of the list of international free agents this year. Center fielder Kane Curnow, 16-year-old from Australia. It looks like he could have a really good potential bat. Not much of a fielder. He's definitely a corner outfielder, even though he's called a center fielder right now. But that bat is certainly interesting. Our scout sees him as having 5-star potential. And same for starting pitcher Victor Flores from Mexico, also viewed as having 5-star potential by our scout. You can see just filthy stuff, potential for a plus fastball, plus slider, plus forkball, and potential for an incredible changeup, but at only 20 out of 80. Who knows if that will ever develop, but looks like he can certainly have 3+ pitches, could add up to really good stuff, plus movement, plus control, and really good stamina, or acceptable stamina, I actually mean to say. Great at holding runners, only 16 years old, and he's already throwing in the low 90s, so I'm kind of inclined to go that way. He's a lefty. Always hard to develop pitchers, but going to look at a couple others. Catcher Leo Venegas from the Dominican. Looks like he could have a pretty solid bat, but not really good defensively, and doesn't really look like he has any position at all defensively. He is durable, which I like, but don't like him better than Flores. And then shortstop Juan Ybarra from the Dominican. Also looks like he has a potentially plus bat. Very versatile defensively, can play just about any infield or outfield position at an acceptable, not great level. And looking at his ratings, he could also play, corner outfield at an acceptable level, but with that arm, really more of a left fielder than a center fielder. But I think we're going to go after Victor Flores. Don't find too many top potential pitchers in the international amateur free agents. When there's one that looks this potentially good out there, going to make a $5 million offer to him and hope that we can get him signed and on board in our international complex. And we've got another interesting decision to make. MJ Melendez is obviously our starting catcher. Signed him to a longer-term deal last offseason. Having kind of the worst year he's had in a while, just batting .211, although he does have 11 homers, so still hitting for some power, but a 92 OPS plus is definitely not what we would expect from him. But a great personality, a average-ish major league hitter, and then good catcher ability and catcher arm. Reese Mcguire has been our longtime backup. He got hurt, and then we've had him on a rehab assignment in AAA to avoid this day when we have to make a decision. Can see hitting just .222 at the major league level for us this year, and then batting .240 in Omaha. He's definitely a bit below average in terms of his batting profile, but a 70 ability, 55 catcher arm, captain personality, 33 years old, real good player to have around. The issue is that we've got a similar player, Jonah Heim, who also just turned 33 with a similar batting profile, also 65 catcher ability, 60 arm, great personality. And he was hitting .250 in Omaha, and he's hit .364 since he came up as our backup catcher. The issue is that if I try to send Jonah Heim down to AAA Omaha, he's going to have to clear waivers. I think he probably will clear waivers, but really don't want to necessarily risk losing him. And the issue with Mcguire is similar. If I want to keep him in AAA, we're going to have to waive and DFA him. So not really sure what to do right now. I'd like to keep them both in the organization, but I think that it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to do that because I'm probably going to lose one of them, either by trying to send Heim down to AAA or by waiving and DFAing Mcguire. And after some thought, I'm going to try to send Heim back down to AAA. Hopefully nobody takes him out from under us. And we'll put Mcguire back up on the Major League roster. I think Mcguire's just a little bit better defensively. that was kind of the difference for us. So got McGuire back on the major league roster, and hopefully we can get Jonah Heim back down to Omaha without anybody grabbing him out from under us, because we'd certainly like to have that depth in the organization if we do have another injury at catcher at the major league level this year. And unfortunately, we're going to miss out on bringing Victor Flores on board. Says he prefers the offer from the Dodgers. So we'll see what we still got available at the international free agents. Kane Kumrau is still out there, or Kane Kernau. I like the bat. He's a corner outfielder, but if that bat develops, still is a potentially big-time player. Venegas, the catcher, doesn't really interest me at all. I don't think the bat's as good, and he doesn't have a defensive position at all. Ibarra, the shortstop, is interesting, like the durable injury proneness and just kind of like the defensive versatility that he offers. But I think I'm going to go with the player with the highest upside. So we'll try to put a $5 million offer out to Kane Kernau and see if maybe we can get him to come on board after we've struck out with the pitcher. And it's shaping up to be a tough year for the Royals in terms of the international amateur free agents. Kernau also doesn't prefer our offer. Flores is signed, and you can see that there's really no big-time players left now. All of the other kind of higher potential players are gone. Danny DeJesus is a middling prospect. He could definitely be a backup catcher at the major league level if he developed perfectly, although we'd really prefer to have better defense. And then Giancinto Marinetti, the Venezuelan, like the personality with the high work ethic, going to have really nice gap power. That's probably the thing we care the least about among any of the batting statistics. Looks other than that, kind of an average-ish hitting profile in a best-case scenario. He's a corner outfielder. Good chance that he'll develop with that good work ethic. Left-handed bat. He's barely 16 years old. So he's kind of mildly interesting. He's looking for $4 million from Minnesota. We'll throw it out there to him. Don't feel great about it, but we've already kind of budgeted that money. So we'll see what happens. And Marinetti, not really happy with our offer. He's got a max offer from the Red Sox, so it looks like he's going to sign there. So I think it's going to be one of those years where we just don't sign any international free agents or international amateur free agents. At this point, Marinetti with 2.5-star potential is the best out there. We can't get him. There's a lot of 2-star, 1.5-star potential players, but don't feel the need to throw money at them unnecessarily. So our profitability will be a bit higher this year than normal because we're not going to spend anything on international free agents, even though we budgeted $5 million for them. We've had some pretty good luck getting our number one selections. I believe 2 or 3 years in a row at this point. So if we're going to have a year that we strike out, it does kind of stink that it's a year with Kernau, who's a 5-star prospect, as well as Flores, who was also a 5-star prospect in our scouts' eyes. But it is what it is. Sometimes those things will happen. And one good piece of news, Heim did make it through waivers, so we put him onto the Omaha roster, so we will have him available if we have some other injuries at catcher down the last 3 months of the season here. And it's all-star roster time. Had a boatload of Kansas City pitchers on the all-star team last season. Let's see how we do this year. Spencer Bauer, defending Cy Young Award winner, 4-4 with a 2.94 ERA on the all-star team. R.J. Dabovich, reliever, 5-0, 2.87 ERA, his second consecutive All-Star appearance. And Trevor Rogers out of the bullpen. We were talking about him at the beginning of the episode. That 6-0 record, his ERA down to 3.17. There was a Cy Young Award winner in the AL 2 seasons ago. Missed last year during the championship season, but back in the All-Star game. And then a fourth pitcher on the All-Star team, our closer, Austin Roberts, 30 saves already, 2.68 ERA, 51 Ks in 40 and a third innings. Looking at the rest of the roster, Bobby Witt Jr., third baseman, having hopefully seems to be the best year of his career so far, batting .318 with 16 homers, 59 driven in. Playing short for us now. He has learned a little bit over the last week and a half as to how to play that position at the major league level. But clearly, when Nicky Lopez is back, he will move to third at least for the rest of this year. And then the rookie Shi-Tong Kim. So the two guys that we've been talking about, who is playing third base for us now, not really picking it up all that quickly. Really doesn't have a perfect arm to play it, but the bat in this rookie year of his really been exceptional. 142 OPS plus at this point, and he makes an all-star team for us as a rookie. So 6 all-stars for the Royals this year, Witt and Kim in the everyday lineup, and then the 4 pitchers. And as we get ready for the All-Star game and the Major League Draft, Nicky Lopez is ready to come back, so that will allow us to really kind of improve the team and stop the experiments with Kim at third and Witt Jr. at short. So going to send Tyler Black, who did hit well for us, 375, but only over 8 at-bats. Send him back down to AAA, where he will get some more playing time. Bring Nicky Lopez back up and let Mr. Nichols put the lineup together, and that pushes Shi-Tong Kim back to first base, pushes Peyton Williams back to DH, and moves Zach DeCenzo out of the starting lineup. And obviously we are much better defensively with Lopez at short, Witt Jr. at third, and Shi-Tong Kim at first base. So it helps us on a lot of different fronts. And just checking in on the new center fielder, Brandon Marsh, has played only 10 games for us, so very small sample size, but batting .300, OPS plus of 100, obviously league average by definition, WRC plus of 103, already put up a tenth of a win in terms of WAR. You know, if he plays that way for us and is a positive WAR player, you know, with his respectable defense, if he's able to kind of hit anywhere near the way he's hitting now, I think he will be an acceptable option for us over the next 3 weeks or so, and then we'll still check in and see if there's anything more interesting available when we get closer to the trade deadline. Should be an interesting draft for the Royals this year. Even though we won the championship last year, we're picking 22nd, as we did not have an exceptional regular season last year with only 86 wins, I believe. So we'll get a chance to hopefully add some talent to the minor league system here. And we made it to our 22nd pick, and it seems like there's definitely some high-end talent still available. You can see, at least according to our scout, there's a 5-star potential and 4.5-star potential starting pitchers available. Bobby Gonzalez, Dan Keogh, and David Tucker, along with a first baseman Josh Conyers and center fielder Angelo Velasquez, who, at least according to our scout, are 4-star and higher potential players. Assume that Travis Lee will suggest that we pick one of them. Let's see. And he's suggesting that we go with Angelo Velasquez, the center fielder. So check out Velasquez, and certainly like the bat. Looks like he could have excellent contact and gap power, excellent in avoiding strikeouts. Not a lot of home run power in just an average-ish eye, but that 70 outfield range, he definitely is a true center fielder. Would love that the error be a little better, but all else being equal, I'd rather have him get to more balls and kind of be average in terms of how he handles them than only getting to an average number of balls out in the outfield as a center fielder. So definitely an interesting prospect. Also very easy to sign, looking for just $1.1 million. So he is a freshman in junior college, but clearly he wants to move on to professional baseball. The other offensive player, talked about Josh Conyers, first baseman. Really interesting potential offensive profile from him. Average eye, but looks like he could potentially be above average at just about everything. Yet the issue with him is he just does not have a position to play at all. Really almost have a hard time playing him at first base. So he is a pure DH. That is probably one of the worst defensive rating profiles I can ever remember seeing for anybody. So looks like he could have a nice bat. He's durable, but not much of a defensive prospect. And then we'll take a look at the three young pitchers. Right-hander David Tucker. Looks like he could have above average stuff, acceptable movement, good control. Has potential to be a three-pitch pitcher with a average-ish fastball, above-average slider, and a great changeup, 50 stamina. That changeup doesn't develop. He's a reliever, though, almost 18 years old. Don't love him, but he's certainly in the mix. Dan Keogh, right-hand starter from Canada. Not the greatest stamina in the world. Certainly could be a starter. Really filthy stuff, acceptable movement, really good control. Potentially could have a great curveball, a really good changeup, and a acceptable fastball. So he is a decent prospect, only 17 years old. And then Bobby Gonzalez, who our scout thinks is a 5-star prospect, plus stamina, really good at holding on runners. Really good stuff, really good movement, potential to have average-ish to a bit above average control. The issue is whether all of his pitches are going to develop. Looks like he could have an average sinker, above average curve, a filthy changeup, and a slider. He's durable, which I like. The issue is if only two of those pitches develop, he's a reliever, which is definitely not optimal, but high adaptability. He's a ground ball pitcher, so he's probably not going to give up a ton of homers. Already throwing, around 90. Keogh, a fly ball pitcher, already also throwing close to 90. His pitches are a little further along. And then Tucker is a fly ball pitcher, also throwing close to 90. They're interesting. I can't say that I definitively disagree with the scout saying that Angelo Velasquez is the way to go. We've been talking a lot about center field. This guy could certainly be a center fielder of the future for us, close to 20 years old. With that contact and that gap power and pretty good speed, he could be slapping doubles and triples all over the field. And you can see in college this past year, 13 doubles, 11 triples, only 6 home runs. Definitely not going to be a power hitter at the major league level. Won't strike out at all. Would really feel better about him if he had a better eye and would walk a little bit more. But the defensive profile is interesting. And before I looked at the profiles, I really thought I was going to end up going with one of the starting pitchers. Gonzalez, if that sinker doesn't develop, he's a reliever. And if he doesn't have that sinker and he's just got a good curve and a good change, his stuff may still be a 70. It is a reliever, but he's not going to have 70 stuff as a borderline starter with a mediocre third pitch. Keogh and Tucker look a little more likely that all 3 pitches of theirs can come along given where they are and where their potential is. but I don't love either of them. Obviously, the hope would be that one of them would drop all the way to the second round, but I think that's extremely unlikely. But we are going to go with Angelo Velasquez. It's always been tough for me, for whatever reason, to find center fielders in OOTP. He's not a perfect player. Like I said, I would feel a lot better about him if I felt that his eye could get up to a 60 and he'd be walking a lot, in addition to that great contact and great at avoiding strikeouts. But I like the range, and I think he could be a pretty good center fielder for these Royals for, a decade or so down the line. So we are going to go ahead and follow our scout's recommendation and select Mr. Velasquez here in the first round and meet his very modest bonus demand. And moving on to our next pick, and actually two of the pitchers are still out there. That's surprising that both Keogh and Tucker are still out there at this point. Obviously pleased with it. And the scout recommends that we take Keogh here in the second round. I feel like I'm going to have to give some thought as to whether we go with Keogh or Tucker, but I feel even better about having taken the center fielder with the first pick, given that two of those starting pitchers that we were somewhat interested in are still around here in the second round. And as I look at both Keogh and Tucker, I can see a little bit more as I think about it a little more why they've dropped. If the changeup doesn't develop for Keogh, he's a reliever, and with the 40 stamina, he's kind of a 5-inning pitcher, even if he is a starter. Also a poor competition level up in Canada. But I do like the fact that he's durable as far as his injury proneness, and if those 3 pitches develop, he's a pretty effective major league starter. Tucker is actually kind of a similar situation. If that changeup doesn't develop, he's a reliever. Does have a little more stamina, and his competition level has been a little more solid. I just feel like there's a little more upside with Keogh. He could end up a high-priced bullpen arm. That's definitely possible. High-priced in terms of where we had to pick him in the draft, but he's not even going to turn 18 until his rookie ball season is over. I think we're going to give it a shot with Keogh. We're going to give him his bonus demand since we didn't spend much on our first-round pick, or we likely won't be spending much on our first-round pick. We can definitely afford him. So we're going to welcome Keogh into the system, and it's a coin flip to me whether he's going to end up a starter or a reliever, but I think that he can be a really good starter, and I think that he would be a potentially excellent reliever for us. So I think he's kind of the best guy out there at this point. So we are going to, for a second round in a row, kind of follow what Travis Lee says and pick up Keogh. And we made it to the third round, and perhaps somewhat surprisingly, Tucker is still out there. Again, my fear is he could become a reliever only, but there is part of me saying, hey, we take the shot on him too and hope that one of the two of them is able to kind of develop all 3 pitches at a high level and become a starter. So he is definitely in the mix, although our scout, who we've been following his recommendations so far in this draft, is recommending the high school right fielder Robert Montanez. Solid batting profile. He's a corner outfielder and a mediocre corner outfielder at that. Really can't play anywhere besides left field or right field, but could definitely be a plus hitter. And he's almost 19 years old. I was going to say he's actually somewhat advanced with his contact and his avoid Ks and his gap power at this level, but he's also pretty old for a high schooler, so that explains it a little bit. Low in leadership, not much speed, not a great base runner, not a great bunter, but certainly with that batting profile could be a a starter at left or right field and could be a excellent kind of fourth outfielder. We'll have to give him some thought. There's also two other pitching prospects that our scout likes. Alexis Areola. With that changeup, he is definitely a reliever. And really his stuff doesn't look all that great. So I kind of see why he has slipped. At least, with somebody like Tucker, you don't know if all three pitches are going to develop, particularly the changeup, but if they all do develop, he can definitely be a starter. Whereas with Areola, unless somehow he, develops a lot better than expected, he's profiling as an almost certain reliever. Jose Rodriguez, a little different. He potentially has three pitches. Again, that changeup only 20 out of 80. So has the stamina to be a starter, just don't know whether he'll have the pitches to be a starter. I think I'm actually going to go with Tucker. I like the upside if everything works out, and I like to take as many shots as possible with the arms. It's very possible he could end up just like our second rounder and end up as a reliever who we maybe picked a little early, given that he ended up as a reliever. But I think this gives us two shots for either Tucker or the player that we picked in the second round to become a starter for us. So we're going to take another shot at drafting somebody who, if everything works out, is going to become a starter. And now they're looking at recommending Jose Rodriguez, who is, as we talked about, has a better chance of becoming a starter. It all is dependent on whether that changeup develops. But I think I'm going to shoot another shot here in the fourth round. Just keep picking pitchers who, if everything comes up perfectly, could become starters with us. So we will go back to following Travis Lee's suggestion in the fourth round and pick a third consecutive starting pitcher with Jose Rodriguez. And I think the fifth round here is the last one that will make you sit through. Scout is recommending another one of the pitchers we've already talked about, Alexis Areola, but he is really going to be a reliever. I do like the fact that he's already throwing in the low 90s, ground ball pitcher I like, but we've taken 3 shots in a row on players who are listed as starters. If one of the 3 develops into a big-time starter, that would be a win, particularly if at least one of the other 2 develops into a good major league reliever. But I think Areola is even less likely to make it as a starter than the others, just by the nature of the pitches that it seems like he has right now. 2 options that we're thinking about, Jerry Terrell, center fielder. Looks like he's really more of a corner outfield, but could play center in a pinch. Decent potential batting profile, like the fact that he's durable, has had an average level of competition. Supposedly he's going to be impossible to sign, so that's not optimal. And then Vinny Tomei, corner outfielder, but he's 6'4". Could put him at first, but he's really a left fielder that you don't love having out there, a first baseman that you don't love having out there, or a designated hitter. Left-handed bat, he's durable, average competition, and he looks a little bit easier to potentially sign than Terrell. So they have broadly similar offensive profiles. If everything works out, they could both be above average offensive players. It definitely looks like. I think I'm going to go with Tomei, though. Although I'm going back and forth now. Terrell's also durable. Tomei just doesn't have a position to play. He doesn't know how to bunt. He doesn't run the base as well. He's slow. I think Terrell is maybe not got as much upside as a hitter, but he's still got a very similar batting profile. It says he's impossible for us to sign, but it's a 5th-round pick. We're going to take a flyer on him and see exactly how much he's looking for. Keep in mind that we do have the benefit of not having signed an international amateur free agent, so we do have a little bit extra money in the budget right now. And we also, signed a very cheap player in the 1st round. We had about $5+ million slotted there. And we've only offered a little more than $1 million to get him signed. So Terrell may be looking for some wacky amount of money, but there is a chance that we might actually have enough cash to give to him. So we are going to bring him on board in the 5th round of the draft, and we'll keep you posted on how it goes in terms of actually getting him signed. And I said I was done showing you the draft, but Vinny Tomei is still around here in the 6th round. I think we got to take him at this point. Just keep taking shots with players who have got potential to be interesting players. Either, a bunch of shots on starting pitchers and a bunch of shots in outfielders we've made over the 6 rounds of the draft this year. And we've definitely got some interesting decisions to make in negotiations. David Tucker, our 3rd rounder, Jerry Terrell, our 5th rounder, and then another player, Kansuke Yamamoto, who we picked in the 16th round, all have just wacky demands. So we are going to get the core players who we know we can signed first, and then decide if we want to make a really big offer to one of or 2 of those other players. Would obviously be good to get Tucker and or Terrell in, but may not be able to do it. And I think we're going to make an initial offer to Terrell, who was the 5th rounder, because if we lose out on Tucker, we'll at least get a replacement pick next year. So I don't think we want to chase him as much. He's also looking for $11 million plus a year. Yamamoto looking for $14.5 million. Terrell, says he's looking for $11.5 million. We've got budget room to offer him, $11.3 million right now. So the fact that we didn't sign an international amateur free agent has given us some flexibility. So we'll see if for $10.5 million, whether getting close to what he's looking for. He says he wants above 11.5, but normally we don't get into a position where we have these negotiations with massive money for 4th and 5th round players. But just as a learning experience, let's see what we can do to potentially bring him on board. I don't think he'll sign for the 10.5. I think we'll probably need to be closer to 12.5, 13 to get him. But we'll make an initial offer to him at least and see what happens. And we've simmed ahead now to July 24th. Still waiting to hear back from Jerry Terrell on that offer. Royals 69-32, so slowing down a little bit, but still obviously having an excellent season. Only up by 12.5 on the White Sox now, who are playing good baseball, but still by far the best record in the American League. Up by 13.5 on the Red Sox for the best record. So actually we're up by 12.5 on the White Sox for the best record, since they're a game ahead of the Red Sox. So looks like we will have home field advantage through the AL playoffs. The Padres only a game behind us now. They've won 8 in a row. So I guess theoretically, if we got into a World Series against the Padres, there's a chance they could pass us for home field advantage. But if we make it back to the World Series, we're willing to deal with that. It's really kind of put up or shut up time for us at this point as far as what we want to do with center field or adding some players. You can see we don't have a ton of money for free agents, even though we haven't made any trades. The reason, I think the reason that changed is that we've got the bigger contract of Reese Mcguire back at the major league level, I think, as opposed to Jonah Heim, but since they're both on major league contracts, I'm not really sure if that's the reason. But we haven't signed anybody, but we don't have quite as much money as we had thought. Looking at center field and what Brandon Marsh has done, he has definitely slowed down since that nice start he got off to, batting just .227 for us, no homers and 66 at-bats. OPS plus down to 61, and he's actually been a negative WAR player for us. So we took a shot on him. Will Taylor hitting .256, similar defensively. Taking a look at the injured list, we're only 2 to 3 weeks away from Frelick being back, but as we talked about in previous episodes, Frelick really isn't a center fielder defensively. Not all that great at playing the position, and his characteristics aren't great. We love the bat, and he'll be right back in the lineup, but would prefer that he not be our starting center fielder. And Jason Dominguez still 2 to 3 months away here on July 24th, so I guess it's possible we'll have him back for the playoffs. Who knows exactly what he's going to look like coming back from a torn PCL. Does have the best potential defensive profile of anyone in our system if he still is good defensively after the injury. But it may be time to see if there's a center fielder out there that we can pick up for a decent price. Other than that, I don't know that there's too much we have to do. Taking a look at the Royals and how we're performing offensively. Still have, by just about every measure, one of the best offenses in the game, third in the AL in runs scored, and we still have, by just about every measure, one of the best pitching staffs in the AL, first in the AL in runs allowed. So our 69-32 record is obviously the best in baseball, 5 games better than expectations, which is rare for us. Been a bit of a sloppy July, 8-7 record so far, and obviously had the All-Star game thrown in there. So not playing quite as well as we have. And the trend that we don't love is our winning percentage has gone down every month of the season so far. 785 in April, 724 in May, 642 in June, and 533 here in July. Hopefully that trend doesn't continue, but we could definitely use a jolt to the team, even though we're playing really well. We're obviously all in on this season, so if there's somebody that we can add who can help make us more competitive for the playoffs, we'll definitely do it, whether it's a center fielder, whether it's an arm, whether it's somebody in another position. I'm going to spend a little time scouring the trade block now. And looking at the trading block, I thought we might have our dream scenario. The Yankees have put Aaron Judge on the block. You can see he's 36 years old, still has really good power, good contact, not what he used to be. But in the final year of his contract, making $28.6 million. The issue is in this sim, unlike real life this year, the Yankees have never really tried turning him into a center fielder. So he'd have to be learning the position on the fly, and with that range and error and the fact that he's 36 years old, just don't know how good he would become. He's also wrecked physically, and we'd have to have the Yankees basically retain his entire salary to make it work. So I don't think it's really an option. We'll see what they're looking for. There's no one to make the deal work. That could actually be because of cash issues and us not being able. Actually, it's probably because of us not being able to retain on the salary. If they retain 95% of his salary, actually we could get him. We'd have to give up a decent player or a decent prospect. There's just a handful of players, the top players on our team and the top prospects in our system, that they would trade for him. But we actually can add him if we decide that that's the way that we want to go. I just don't know that we're going to give up starting third baseman, key starting pitcher for us. Although Williman's actually moved to the... Actually, he has started 21 games. It's just he only has a 4-2 record because he doesn't even go 5 innings a start. But Vasquez, who's the top prospect in our system, the number 7 prospect in baseball, recently moved up to Double-A where he's batting .311. Don't know that we want to trade him for a rental. Starting catcher Melendez, good pitching prospect Lozano, Caleb Lagerwell, who's 8-4 with a 4.08 ERA for us, but one of the solid pitching profiles, a starter for us. Lazioli, good shortstop prospect. Kin, we're not going to trade. Cabrera, our starting second baseman, we're not going to trade. Bauer, our top pitcher, we're not going to trade. And then Alvarado, another one of the big prospects in our system. So we can get Judge and we can get the Yankees to basically retain all of his money, but we'll have to, it'll be painful for us to do it. But something to keep in mind over the next week or so as we get closer to the trade deadline. But would like to find a better defensive center fielder who's also got a decent bat if we're going to go down that route. Just don't know that anyone's out there. Ketel Marte isn't really any better defensively than what we have. Now, he is a better bat, so he would be an interesting bat to add to the team. He's in the final year of his contract, batting .298 with 13 homers for Detroit this year, 125 OPS plus. Would certainly be an interesting bat to add. You know, I mean, he's similar in a way to Frelick in that he's really not a center fielder, even though we could play him out there. But he would definitely be an upgrade for one of our corner outfield spots. I think the question is just what his price is going to be. I'm guessing it's going to be more than Judge. Yeah, we'd have to give up Frelick or Bobby Witt Jr. to bring him on board, even if we took his entire contract. So not an optimal situation there. Probably not one to chase. Akil Baddoo, a little better of a center fielder. Not quite as good a bat. Also with Detroit, actually. In the final year of his contract, maybe he's an upgrade at center field for us. We'll see what they're looking for him. No one who makes the deal work. What if it might be a money issue if they keep 50%? Yeah, we'd have to trade away Caleb Lagerwell, so the price for him is still really high. And last but not least, Victor Robles, out for 2 weeks with a fractured thumb. He's probably the best option defensively, acceptable offensively potentially, even though he's only hitting 180 for the Marlins this year. He's fragile. He's 31 years old, last year of his contract. I believe in our last episode we looked at him and the price was ridiculous. Let's see if the price has come down. Not really. They want like the 5 best players on our team: Bauer, Kin, Lagerwell, Williman, or Witt Jr. So prices are still high here. Don't feel like there's anything we have to do right now. Looking more broadly at the players on the trade block, Blake Workman, starting pitcher, solid. And 112 ERA plus this year, making $11.2 million in the last year of his contract. Pitching really isn't a problem for us. I mean, honestly, nothing's a problem for us right now. Yeah, price for him is high. Have to give up Kin to bring him on board, so certainly not going to do that. One other player to just look at here, if I could, should have just not clicked and just gone back, but I'm not the most efficient clicker in the world. There's definitely ways to be more efficient playing the game than I do, but it is what it is. I'm old. Riley Green, a corner outfielder with a solid bat. Having kind of a disappointing year for Detroit. Boy, Detroit's got all of their outfielders out available. I wonder what the price for Green is relative to the 2 potential center fielders that we looked at. Yeah, the only guy they would take straight up is Bobby Witt Jr. So I don't think there's anything obvious for us to do right now. Now, we've got another week until we get to the trade deadline, so we're going to kind of keep simming ahead. But not all that inspired that we're going to be able to come up with something this year, because the prices for the players we're interested in are just exorbitant at this point. Maybe they'll be a little lower 6 or 7 days from now, but I wouldn't count on it. Well, it's kind of put up or shut up time now for the Royals. We are on July 31st, the trade deadline, and we keep selling out every game. I hate to do it, but I'm going to bump the ticket price up one more time, just another $1. I just would prefer that we maximize revenue per game rather than attendance. But I don't want to just totally game the system and keep playing with it, so I won't touch it again this year. But that'll either generate a little bit extra money for us, or cut attendance. It still probably will generate more revenue for us regardless, but it may keep us from selling out every game consistently. The issue is just that fan interest is high, and we've actually moved fan loyalty up to good over the course of this sim. Our market size is still small, but financially, we've been really successful thus far in this sim in terms of attendance and just generating revenue. So hopefully we can go on another long playoff run this postseason and generate a lot more money to keep that budget moving up in the right direction. But really isn't about the finances right now. It's about figuring out what we're going to do here on the final day before the trade deadline. Standings right now still up 12.5 on the White Sox, 74 and 34. We're now 3 games clear of San Diego for the best record in baseball. So we don't need to do anything, but given that we're obviously all in on trying to win this season, if there's something we can do that will make us more likely to win, we want to do it. Check in on how Brandon Marsh has been playing, and he's actually moving the batting average back up towards respectability, now batting .253 since he joined us, over 91 at-bats. Has struck out 25 times in those 91 at-bats, but he's not great at avoiding strikeouts, so that's not a shock. 81 WRC plus, 81 WRC plus, OPS plus, and WRC plus, slightly positive WAR. Looking at the fielding stats for us here, he's been, an above-average defensive center fielder, so we can't complain about him too much. Obviously would love to find an upgrade if we can. Just not sure at this point whether there's going to be anything cost-effective that we can possibly do among those players that we had talked about just recently who are actually available on the trade block. Presumably a better player who's not on the trade block is going to be even more expensive. So I don't know that there's going to be anything for us to do, but we'll give it a final look with all of these guys who are out there. And the prices are really still exorbitant for the top players: Riley Green, Ketel Marte, Akil Baddoo, Aaron Judge, and then also kind of looking at the top pitchers, Blake Workman, Sean Helly, Gavin Hollowell, even Sixto Sanchez. It was the Bobby Witt Juniors, the Caleb Lagerwells, who were, the only players on our team who were going to get those kind of deals done. So it's kind of weird for us, but I think we're going to stand pat at the trade deadline. The only thing I've seen that we want to think about is our old buddy Kyle Lewis, who was our starting center fielder for many years. You can see his last couple years with us, a 67 OPS plus and a 63 OPS plus. Not much of an offensive profile at this point, and honestly his defensive profile is only maybe a tad better than what we have right now with Brandon Marsh. I guess he's, a notch better in terms of his outfield arm if we believe everything. I don't think he's quite as good offensively. Now, he is a right-handed bat, and Marsh is a left-handed bat. Looking at the ratings and the splits, Marsh is definitely, well, not definitely, but not significantly, but he's definitely better against right-handers. Against lefties, his profile is definitely below average. I guess the only question is whether we think that Kyle Lewis would be better against left-handed pitching. He does have a little more power against lefties, a little bit better eye, not much gap power, acceptable contact. Do we try to pick up Kyle Lewis and platoon him in outfield, in center field with Brandon Marsh? I guess that's the only question. It gives us more competence at center field defensively. It gives us a little more depth. I just don't know that looking at the ratings, that's, I guess, the issue with Will Taylor, is that he's equally mediocre offensively against both lefties and righties, and that's why he's not involved in a platoon right now. We could send Taylor down to the minors if we decided to trade for good old Kyle Lewis. And he's just on a one-year contract, and we can get him for just about anything. It's weird after we let him go and he was so ineffective. But I think in a platoon environment, I mean, he's really only slightly better against lefties than he is against righties. It's just really that he's got a slightly better eye against lefties. Otherwise, his profile is very similar. So I'm not even sure if Byron Nichols would even play him over Marsh against lefties. Looking at Brandon Marsh's batting profile, though, he's definitely weaker against lefties. He's not as good as contact. He's not as good as gap power. I think we're going to try to pick up Lewis. As I showed you, we can get him for nothing. Essentially nothing. And it just gives us a little more flexibility. I mean, we don't have to give up anything. This guy right here, Adamiak, 27-year-old reliever in high A ball, who's never going to amount to anything, nothing special with the personality. I mean, basically they'll give him away for nothing. Can we get them to retain a bunch of his contract? Yeah, it seems like I don't know if they'll retain it all, but I think this is actually going to end up being kind of similar to what we did with they just want to get him off the team. I think this is kind of similar to the trade that we made a month ago. It's low risk. I think it makes us slightly better on the margin to pair him with Marsh, send Taylor back down to the minors. Now we are going to have to figure out something else in the outfield when Sal Frelick is back, which we're getting close to, but I think we're slightly better with Marsh and Lewis in the outfield than we are with Marsh and Taylor as our center fielders. A little better defensively, maybe slightly better batting against left-handers. It'll be interesting to see if Byron Nichols goes with a platoon with these guys, but we're going to go ahead and make that trade. I agree it's not really exciting. We brought in two kind of mediocre center fielders, one of which we had for a lot of seasons. Was reasonably productive his first few years with the team and then kind of tailed off those last couple seasons as we saw. Well, we're going to send Will Taylor back down to AAA, bring Kyle Lewis up to the majors, and then we'll see what Byron Nichols wants to do with the lineup. And he actually wants to play Kyle Lewis against both lefties and righties. We're going to overrule him on that. When he's playing Brandon Marsh in right field against lefties now as opposed to Junior. Oh, that's because Paulini's hurt. He banged up a little bit. That's why Paulini's out of the lineup. No, but he's still playing him against righties. So we're going to overrule that. We're going to keep Marsh in the lineup against right-handers. That left-handed bat and his profile is definitely a little better against righties, particularly compared to Lewis. So I think that Byron Nichols had put Lewis in there because he is slightly better defensively, but we're going to go for a little more offense in the matchup, and I'll actually move Marsh ahead of Nicky Lopez in the batting order. So I know some of you are screaming for us to manage everything, and as I've talked about, next sim that we do, we are definitely going to play as GM/manager, trying to just do things on the margins here, but that's it for the trades for us. We'll see what happens with the addition of Kyle Lewis, bringing him back after he left. But, over this last month, we've added in a couple of new center fielders. None of them are going to be mistaken for Mickey Mantle out there, or even in the case of these Royals, neither of them are going to be mistaken even for a Willie Wilson out there. But I think we're a little better than we were. And, we'll see what happens when we get Frelick back. Probably going to have a difficult decision to make with a Zach DeCenzo or a Jose Barrero once Frelick is back and ready to go, unless we want to decide to let go of a Kyle Lewis or a Brandon Marsh. Just check in on Junior Marin before the end of the episode. The 24-year-old rookie, having a solid year, 263, 22 homers, 66 driven in, 118 OPS plus. He has definitely been a nice addition to our offense. Bobby Witt Jr., one of the All-Stars, still having a good year, 309 average. Not as much power recently, 17 homers, 65 ribbies, but 27 steals, 133 OPS plus, 5.1 WAR. Think he would be in the potential discussion about a American League MVP unless someone's having a monster season. And you can see that he is up against one person with a monster season, Danny DeAndre of Detroit, 24-year-old shortstop, 331, 27 home runs, 173 OPS plus, and 7.8 WAR. So even though we are at this point up 21.5 games on Detroit, would think that he would still be a pretty strong competitor for the AL MVP award. Witt is leading the league in steals now. Looking at our pitchers, Will Goebel, 14 wins, despite the fact that he hasn't started a single game. That's kind of insane that he could lead the AL in wins as a reliever. He's tied with Sandy Alcantara right now. Spencer Bauer, defending Cy Young Award winner, third in strikeouts. Austin Roberts leading the league in saves. And Spencer Bauer is second in pitcher WAR at this point. So going to have another 2 months ahead of us to see if we've got any players who can stack up and put together good seasons in terms of picking up some of the individual awards. But obviously we're most interested in the team awards. Can see we've lost 2 in a row here at the end of July, up 12.5 on the White Sox still. So a relatively quiet trade deadline for the Royals, but we are still in very good shape. We will come back in our next episode and see how the months of August and September go. Hopefully we can avoid any major injuries as we prepare for the playoffs. Taking a look broadly at the organization. Frelick 1 to 2 weeks away, so we will have him back hopefully in mid-August. Probably spend a little bit of time down in AAA before we bring him up, and then we'll have an interesting roster decision to make. We'll see how Marsh and Lewis are doing at the time, and Jason Dominguez still out for 2 months, so there's a chance we could have him back for the playoffs and get him into the mix for center field. Again, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, if he's just as effective defensively as he was pre-injury and as our scout thinks he is, he would be the best defensive option. But right now we've got a platoon with Kyle Lewis and Brandon Marsh, and we'll see how they do over the final 2 months of the season. But we will cover that all in our next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Love to hear your comments down below. Appreciate everyone who's listened through to this point. Would also appreciate those likes and subscriptions if you haven't done that yet. And we will talk again soon in our next episode when we'll finish up this 2028 season with the KC Royals. Thanks for watching.